Okay, so what would life be like if the protagonist was one of the opposing gender? Was the opposite gender? The book is kind of iffy in my opinion because while there is strong and intelligent women among their society, the blatant sexism or mistreatment is more prevalent, and in my opinion, not really necessary. From my understanding, the story is set in the future, and while yes, sex workers are still a thing to this day, those on Mars are still looked at and slut shamed. And on top of that, for whatever reason, there are sex rings that everyone knows about but aren't doing anything about on top of other things. Which is a weird thing to bring up in a book about Darrow and his journey to rise to the rankings as a gold. So in my opinion, if Darrow were to be a girl, he would probably have to really prove to the other gold that he was in fact capable of being the brightest out of all the other teens his age, despite his gender.
Okay, so in my book, it would be different, but I don't know if it were to be easier or harder. Because as a girl where baby's growing up, it's difficult fitting in and having a regular life. But she doesn't have to worry about getting into fist fights, which most boys do get into in her like circumstance. Because boys are just dumber in general, so they do dumb things, including like fighting and joining gangs and etc. So yeah.
So mine's the same as Bianca's. Basically, I think it would be more like of a less intense story of what Darrow goes through, because like in the book, the majority of the female characters are kind of like stay-at-home moms or they're working as sex workers. So it would be a very different kind of story. And like Bianca said, it would be harder for Darrow to prove to the other golds that he's worthy of being one.
Okay, in my book, it's Derek, the main character. He's kind of like a stereotypical like guy. Like he gets in fights. He's like a drug dealer. He's like in gangs and stuff. So if it was a girl, like I'm not sure how that'll play out because I don't know if she'd be like getting in fights and stuff. So yeah, it'd definitely be different.
I feel like if your character were to be a girl, it would still be the same.
Yeah.
Because she's in the same environment.
But I feel like they just picked the guy for that
Yeah,
reason, like getting in fights.
like,
yeah, that's probably why.
Kind of like a stereotype of like gangs
Yeah.
and how they're mostly men. Whatever. Okay, so
Number two.
how are women viewed within the society? Either slut shamed or used for their bodies based on their creation, or even killed off for fun. Now, women are also treated as equals in some parts, but for the most part, it seems like the author's intent was to make the book seem like other planets like Mars were far more uncivilized than what I'm guessing Earth was in their time / in the future.
I just want to add on that about like the slut shaming part and how it relates to like today, because a lot of like girls talk about like how they get catcalled, and I've never been catcalled, so it's like that's just a fact. Roke, have you been?
No,
Exactly.
I agree with you.
So like it relates a lot to real life as well. But
It can obviously still happen to guys, but not as often. Or
Yeah.
it's mostly
It's
like
definitely more
not as like
prevalent with-
disgusting.
yeah. So in my book, it depends which part of the town they're in. If they're in downtown, they'd be viewed as like objects because most females in downtown are prostitutes or strippers. They don't get respect in downtown Montreal. But if the women are living just outside of downtown, it's slightly different, but not by a ton. You have to remember that this is Quebec, and they have like a very European culture, and in Europe, women are treated differently than they are here. So yeah, you just gotta keep that in the back of that mind.
So mine's pretty much like similar to Nick's as well, because like you said how in downtown areas they're seen as like objects and not as like human beings and stuff. It's the same thing like Darrow, he got to see Mars like finally not in the mines, he got to see the city up there. And there was like these three girls chasing this one guy, and they were like showing us like how they were kissing him and all that, and just like all that like stereotype stuff. And then he walks through the streets and there's sex workers, obviously all women that they have there, and then he goes to a club, again all women who were created for that thing. So it just shows like how in like this book it's more of the male are seen as like the powerhouses of the world.
Okay, so in my book, there's not very many like characters that are women, but there's Jared's mom, and he's like has to help her a lot because they don't have a lot of money. So like she tries to provide for him, but he basically has to like get the money and everything for her. So they're not very like well off or anything. But the only other really female character is one of Jared's friends, I guess, but she's like kind of like the popular girl at school and really rich and stuff. So it's kind of two sides to that one.
So, do you believe believe that the female characters in your novel are good and strong role models for other females. And I said that with what some of them have gone through, I believe they are strong or good role models in their own way. Specifically Io, who in no way should have died such a horrible death that Darrow somehow survived.
I think Baby is a very good role model, a very strong role model for a lot of reasons. First of all, she had a drug-addicted father, and they were moving from place to place, so she hasn't had a very stable childhood yet, and she's doing pretty well for herself. Yes, she's done a lot of bad things, but everyone makes mistakes. It's important that she learn from them, and that she's trying her hardest to make do with what's given to her.
So for mine, there's like some of them are shown as like pretty like strong role models, like Io and Harmony, just for what they do and how they're trying to fix things. And like Io being the female character, she had more courage than majority of them, like mostly everyone. Like there's only, from what I've heard, one other person who died because of the thing that she did. So she had a lot of courage to do that, and it's definitely a good role model for everyone else in the mines there.
Okay, so for my book, kind of like what Bianca said, like the main character Jared, his mom, like she's gone through a lot. Like she has to provide for him, and she like moved for him to kind of have a better life. But he like tries to help. I don't know how to explain this. He like tries to help her, but he kind of has his like own stuff going on. But she basically like is going through a lot with his life and her life. Kind of like, yeah.
So, how are the roles of both men and women defined in your novel? Do women have the same position of power or roles as men? So, there are many women in high positions of authority on Mars, but most don't have a much well-grounded position or a single position at all, other than staying home and being a housewife.
So the boys and the girls do not have the same power in the book. In the book, the boys are stronger, like muscular-wise, and so in the book that means that they're leaders and they control things, which is, I don't know how that makes sense, but they're just little kids, so you have to remember that. They don't really know about sexism because they're young. So it's not like they're sexist and they say only men can be the leaders, they just don't know yet.
So my book's actually pretty similar to yours, Nick, except because like everyone's young, like Darrow's only 16, 17, except from when he was raised, he was brought up into the system of where men are the workers and females are more of like the stay-at-home moms and things like that. But in the book there are some like women who have high powers, like Octavia. She's basically like the ruler of like everything. But for the majority wise, it's mostly men that get to be seen as like the workers and who get money and who live like the good lives.
Okay, so for my book, I think the roles are like pretty similar. Like most of the characters, like women and men, seem to get treated the same. But the only thing I can think of is like there's a part in my book where where Jared, he's doing like a drug deal, I guess. But this girl comes up to him like wanting something he sells, but she's like really pretty and stuff. So of course he like gives it to her for like free. So that's kind of her like having power over him, I guess.
Okay, so how is equality present in your novel, if any? Equality is present in the way women have the same opportunity as men do, in higher ranked positions of power. However, the author could have done a better job at making it more inclusive for not just like a small group, but mostly everyone, every woman, and getting rid of the rape culture and normalized murder within the book.
So all the kids around Baby see each other as equals because they're all going through the same stuff and they're all too young to understand what inequality is between genders. There aren't any times where a boy will say that he's better than a girl, but there will be times like he says like boys rule and girls rule, but that's just like kid stuff, you know?
So I'm kind of stuck on if I even think there is equality and if there isn't, so like if you guys have anything to say, just add on. The reason I say that is because it kind of isn't equal because like from when they're born, they are like, in a sense, like manufactured into what color they're going to be, into what kind of worker they're going to be. So from when they start off, they're already put into the system and shown as where they're going to be, so they don't have an opportunity to become a gold if they're a red. But at the same time, when they're in that color, they have the opportunity to get like as one of like the best workers, or like kind of figure things out like that.
That's kind of, I just want to add, that's kind of scary because like with all like the DNA editing now, like that's probably gonna be the future if you think about it, because then someone could just edit you to be like a perfect miner or a perfect like burger
Like
flipper.
a certain class.
Well, because
Exactly.
like in the club in my book, this guy literally manufactured these girls to be sex workers for him, and he made them how he wanted them to look.
Scared me.
Mickey, right?
Mm.
In my book, I think equality is, well, I haven't like finished the book yet, but equality is pretty like the same with like gender, but my book's more about like class and like race. That's not equal. So yeah, but for gender, it seems so far as if equality is shown.
So are there positive and supportive relationships involving both males and females, or is there hostility and competition between the two? So there is some hostility between those that aren't married or those that aren't from the same family. Hostility in the sense of ranking, and hostility in the sense of enjoyment of certain activities men found enjoyable that the author forced into the novel.
So I'll use Baby and the relationship between Baby and Theo, and Theo is like the boy that she has a crush on, and they have a crush on each other. And I'm gonna say it's a mix of both, because like for example, Theo dislocated Baby's arm, not on purpose, by accident, but that is a little hostile. And then he didn't talk to her for like 3 weeks, and then when he found her after like 3 weeks, he hugged her, like, and he was being nice. So it's a mix of both. But usually, like, and then we take Baby and her dad Jules. Ever since he got out of rehab, he's on medication, and he's also an alcohol. He's drinking alcohol now, so he's very hostile and is always like super rude to Baby. So yeah.
Darrow and Io had a good relationship before Io obviously died. Like they loved each other. They weren't like hostile with each other or anything. But I think it mostly comes from like the males who are just competitive against each other in like the workplace and all that.
In my book, the two people that are closest to Jared are his grandmother and his mom, so he has really good relationships, like supportive relationships with them. There's some part in the book where there's like kind of competition because between girls and boys, because Jared's kind of in like the drug business, so they're trying to like basically see who they can like, I don't know how to explain this, but like there's competition, like the girls are like selling and the guys are too, so that's the only competition really.
Thank you, Mr. Barrington.